What is up, everybody? In this video, I will be making a ranking I've been wanting to make ever since I started the channel. And I don't know why I haven't done it yet. I guess I was just saving it for a good time. And you know what? Today at 4 a.m. or however late it is, 3:09 a.m., you know what? It felt just like the perfect time. I was over here playing some Star Ocean 4, drinking some Diet Pepsi, and you know what? I was like, you know what? I'm bored. I want to make this ranking. So that's where we're at. This game has one of the most underrated dungeon lineups of any video game. I'd probably say as my favorite dungeon lineup of any video game, to be honest. Every dungeon in this game is just so epic. So you know what? Oh yeah. And I'm just going to go from worst to best dungeon because this order, whatever this order is a complete mess, and I'd rather just go in order of these tiers. Also, because of how much I love Blue Dragon, I just couldn't make normal tier lists, so I had to do some weird quotes from the game, of course, because that's how it is. Anyway, let's move into the worst dungeon in Blue Dragon. Which one is it gonna be? Oh, come on. Bro, they didn't even count as a dungeon, these people. Wait, hold up. They counted Road to Jabral as a dungeon. See, this is how bad this dungeon even is. It just can't exist in a tier list, apparently. Anyway, I didn't make this tier list. But what we're talking about is the Aurora Ruins. And it is not even that bad of a dungeon. But here's the problem. Well, apparently this doesn't even consider it a dungeon, so yeah. But regardless, all you do is you walk in, Toripo's like, "What's up, bro? Toripo," and then yeah, the Stonosaurus pops up and you defeat it, and then it's over. So this will be the we'll go down here at a row below. Aurora Ruins. You know what? The funny thing is the Aurora Ruins is still better than like 70 RPG dungeons I can think of, and yet it's still this bad in this ranking. Goes to show how good this game is. I mean, I know that a cool looking dungeon where all you do is fight one boss might not sound that great, but you know what? It's a lot better than all those annoying dungeons in some games. So yeah, this will be the Aurora Ruins tier. And then next is the Road to Jabral, because what the frick, why is that even on here? It's fine. Actually, you know what? That's probably not even the worst thing. Okay, anyway, I swear my head is on straight. It is 3 a.m., but... Okay, Exile Forest. At least this dungeon isn't just a circular room with one treasure chest and a boss fight like the Aurora Ruins is, but it's just a hallway that looks cool. 3 treasure chests instead of 1. It's actually relevant to the plot of the game. You have to go save this dude and bring him back to his wife, girlfriend, I can't remember. And then yeah, you know what? Yeah, I since it actually like is a dungeon, I'm gonna put it above the Aurora Ruins. But I will say the boss fight isn't nearly as good. However, story relevance does give it a bit of an edge over the Aurora Ruins, so we'll go with that. And then Road to Jabral will be next, because you know what? It's cool, but all it is a mini game. Actually, not yet. I didn't even think to count Road to Jabral as a dungeon, but you know what? Now that it is counted as a dungeon, it's gonna shuffle up my ranking a little bit in the notes, because anyway. All right, let's move into the next one, which is going to be Gull Mountains. Yeah, this dungeon is just mid. It's not even that bad, but it's just mid. It doesn't stand out in any way except for the aesthetic, which the aesthetic does make it look really cool, but it's a filler dungeon that takes you from Lago Village back to Talta Village. And there's no fun bosses or story elements or anything. And yeah, it has really cool ethereal purple aesthetic, and the enemies are pretty fun to fight, but yeah, it doesn't have too much substance to it, so that is unfortunate. Anyway, next we have got the Ancient Ruins Forest, which the fact that I'm putting it in whatever this would be, D tier or E tier or whatever, is kind of crazy, but that's just, I feel like from here on out, there's a bunch of banger dungeons. Like, even with the Ancient Ruins Forest, or I guess this guy called it the Ancient Forest Ruins, but the Ancient Ruins Forest, from here on out, I think every dungeon in this game is anywhere from good to one, on a scale from good to being one of the best RPG dungeons of all time. So yeah, even the I gave up tier is honestly not that bad, I guess. So that's kind of weird. But you know what? Yeah. I gave up on saying that anything else is bad, I guess. So anyway, Gold Mountains, sorry, not Gold Mountains, Ancient Ruins Forest. It's just a pretty standard forest dungeon, but it has great enemy design. It has a great boss battle at the end of it, the Land Shark Sea. But I would rank this quite a bit higher on the list due to being able to defeat the machine that wrecked the village. But since Disc 3 does a weird reveal that there are multiple land sharks, it just kind of ruins the moment a little bit. So yeah, it's a cool dungeon with a cool boss, but the plot is kind of thin here, and it kind of is a bad plot twist. But you know what? I still think it's an alright dungeon as a whole. Alright, Patchestown Underground is going to be our next dungeon on this list. And where will that be? Okay, there it is. Patchestown Underground is by no means bad. I mean, the Patchestown is one of the coolest, underrated RPG town. Freaking love that place. Yeah, you get the green barrier there, the looming urgency of needing to save Kluke while you're trapped in this barrier place. Jiro and Shu cringely discussing Riz stuff up at the pond. The music is amazing. The townspeople hate you just because you can use magic and all that stuff. But yeah, Patchestown is great. But Patchestown Underground is a small yet unnecessarily confusing dungeon that just didn't need to exist, in my opinion. And it's after like there's like quite a few banger dungeons right before this one, and by comparison, this one just feels really it kind of breaks the urgency of the game. Like, you just want to go save Kluke, and yet you're underground in this dumb dungeon. But you know what? It has a decent boss fight, and it doesn't ruin. It kind of breaks the pacing of the game a little bit, but at least it doesn't like ruin a plot moment like Ancient Forest Ruins does. But I mean, still, the dungeon is designed pretty interestingly. I mean, it's cool. Like, it's not a bad dungeon, but it does break the pacing of the game a little bit, and it's a little annoying. So at least it doesn't kind of do dirty stuff on the plot like Ancient Ruins Forest does, but it does slow down the pace of the game. So yeah, I take it back. I think that now North perhaps and above are good dungeons. I did say the Ancient Ruins Forest was a good dungeon, but I forgot how much it kind of had that plot twist I didn't like. So now from here on out, you know, I want to make one more tier, and it's going to be called Gap. Huge Gap. Huge Gap. Bigger than Ultimate Zabo. There we go. You're welcome. Anyway, that looks so ugly compared to the rest, but you know what? Whatever, it works. So yeah, there's a huge gap here. Everything below here is pretty mid, but yeah, everything above is a classic RPG dungeon. Everything from here on out, I really, really like a lot. So yeah, everything from here on out goes to show that Blue Dragon has my favorite dungeon design of any RPG, at least that I've played so far. So next we got the Treasure Storehouse. Yeah, this is a pretty cool place. You break into this dude's mansion, and yeah, I mean, it concludes the arc of the Alumaru Village optional side quest. You get to sneak into Jilalaw's mansion. Yeah, there's some cool monster fights down here. Oh frick, I forgot to move it. Treasure Storehouse. There's some cool monster fights down here. It's yeah, the boss fight's really cool. There's cool rewards here. It's a great section of the plot. And the fact that this is in 20th place on my list, this would probably be one of the better dungeons in a lot of games I've played. So you know what? Like, this is a cool dungeon. There's a nice verticality to it with the pitfalls and stuff. But, you know, and yeah, the great monster fights is probably my favorite. Yeah, good stuff. All right, Mecha Base is also a good dungeon. There we go, mecha base. Yes. So the big problem here is there are 2 mecha bases, and by comparison, the OG mecha base is quite a bit worse than the upper mecha base, and it just feels kind of mid compared to it. But other than that, I mean, when I say mid, I don't really mean mid. There's huge monster fight potential here. You can get like 50 row balls in one dungeon. There's a decent boss, decent mini boss. Also, it's a base floating around in the sky with endless robots in it, so that's really cool. And yeah, it's a cool looking dungeon, but other than the aesthetic, well, it's a cool looking dungeon with great enemies, but in terms of actual like substance to the dungeon, it isn't as good as a lot of places. But it's just an epic, grandiose feel to the mecha base. But compared to the upper mecha base, I feel like it does suffer a little bit. And if it weren't for the upper mecha base existing, I probably would have given the edge to. I would probably have mecha base ranked quite a bit higher. But since there's 2 mecha bases in the game, I'm over here just like, yeah, I don't want to rank it any higher. All right, next we have got the Undersea Cavern, which is a good dungeon all around. You go under the water and it takes you to another island. It's like this undersea passage. The design looks really good, but it's like a hallway of enemies with a cool boss at the end. But what really makes this dungeon stand out is if you play it in hard mode, it will absolutely own you if you don't have good strategy. Those broadsword fish, oh boy, that's probably the hardest thing in the whole game. Hard mode broadsword fish. So yeah, it just makes this dungeon stand out. Yeah, and it has a good boss. The Hydradler is a fun one. Yeah, Undersea Caverns is pretty good. And the last one in the North Perhaps tier is the one that I didn't even think I was going to put on this list, but here we are. That is the Road to Jabral. It's basically a high stakes mini game plus a boss at the end, and that's pretty cool. Yeah, I think it's a pretty decent place overall, but I mean, it is just a road, and I didn't even consider it a dungeon. Now that it's on here, I'm like, okay, that makes sense that it is a dungeon. But yeah, Road to Jabral, fun mini game, great boss fight. Zola comes in, and yeah, I think it's really cool. So get introduced to the best, like second best main character in the game. I think Shu is my favorite, but Zola and Shu are easily the best characters in this game by a lot. But yeah, I just freaking love Road to Jabral. And yeah, it being this low and Undersea Cat, like all these things being this low feels weird to me just because I love all these dungeons. But yeah. All right, next we move into the Drill Machine, which we're going to go up into the Call It a Jack-O-Lantern at the least tier, which if you don't understand that reference, it's from Blue Dragon Plus. So yeah, someone says something, Zalbo or something. Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why that quote stuck in my head, but you know what? It did. So anyway, Drill Machine. This dungeon has a really cool aesthetic. And this dungeon literally is a vehicle to get to the next dungeon. So that's really cool. It moves the story along really well. It introduces the player to the 4th playable character, Marumaro, who's annoying as frick in some ways, but also fun in some ways. So you know what? Cool enough. I love the ancient technology vibe here. It does have the easiest and most basic boss in the whole game, the Winking Patroller, but it has a great design, story, introduction to the 4th party member, and it takes you to one of the best dungeons in the game. And yeah, it's so cool that the dungeon takes you to another dungeon. Like, that's what I'm talking about. Drill Machine, super cool garbage here. So yeah. All right, the Devour Forest is not the best in terms of like layout, and it does have a cool atmosphere, but where it really shines, other than that atmosphere, is the fact that at this point in the game, you only have 4 party members. Zola went off and did some crazy thing at the end of Disc 2. So this is the first dungeon in Disc 3. And you only have 4 party members, and 3 of them have their shadows lost. So you're at the point where, like, you're basically soloing the battles with Shu, and it's just crazy. It makes it's a fun and unique dungeon. The level design isn't the greatest, but the atypical, the mix up of the gameplay, it just makes it fun, unique gameplay experience. And in the end, it finally gives you a reason to use those grand and flawless gems that have been sitting at the bottom of your inventory the whole game. So yeah, it has a cool atmosphere and the layout is pretty mid, but in terms of the actual like battle gameplay, this is a really cool dungeon, and yeah, really enjoyed it. All right, now we move up okay, you know what? Road to Jabral will go here to balance it out, make it look a little bit better. But yeah, now we're moving up to the It Smells Like Kluk tier with this next one, the Laser Field, which is a banger of a dungeon. First of all, the moon lasers, really cool concept. And yeah, the whole time you're running through this place, freaking moons are shooting lasers on you. Yep, you heard that right. Moons are shooting lasers on you. It's a barren wasteland. And you know, usually barren wastelands are kind of boring, but in this game, of course it's not, because it's Blue Dragon. And there's just a bunch of lasers shooting at you as you run around this place. And also, other than that, this is the entrance to the underground Bearway Town, which is an absolute banger of a town. But this is also the best grinding spot in the game. And with Field Barrier, you can literally just walk into a wall and kill all these enemies and literally max out your job classes without even touching the game. That's what I'm talking about. But yeah, other than that, the great execution of this barren wasteland, great concept. Really fun place to just traverse and all that jazz, and it's the best grinding spot in the game. So yeah, great dungeon. All right, the underground river is basically the laser field, but instead of a barren wasteland, it is moon lasers shooting onto you in an underground river, which is just cooler. And yeah, the moon lasers are raining down from above into the underground river. Not only do you get the laser field, it's basically just an upgraded laser field with a better aesthetic and a boss fight, the Moody Dragon boss fight, which you can summon by killing all the enemies in this room. And it's just a fun little like, oh frick, I killed all the enemies, now it's a boss fight. So that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, the first of the 5 legendary dragons, so that's cool. There's another great grinding spot here. Yeah, it has the better aesthetic than the laser field, has a better grinding spot. And yeah, it's just like literally a little better than the laser. It's just laser field, but a little better. A little worse of a grinding spot. A little worse enemy design. But there's a boss and a better aesthetic. So that's what I'm talking about. All right, so this next one is more of a sentimental value thing, but this is the first dungeon in Blue Dragon, Ancient Ruins. Yeah, it's not. It is a little unique in that at this point you don't have any shadows or anything, so you're just doing basic attacks, and it's like really boring. So I would be like, yeah, sentimental value can't get me too high, but it does have some epic stuff. If you revisit the dungeon, you get some 3 epic boss fights in here. You can exploit the corrosive poo to get a bunch of black belts, which is epic. Absolutely fantastic. You can't tell I like my grinding spots, but yeah. There's also a super boss fight against King Poo, which is an absolutely fun fight. Also, if you look at the murals on the wall, it's really cool. And if you pay enough attention, on a replay, you can actually look at all the murals and it tells you the whole plot of the game on the walls and foreshadows what's going to happen. And that's what those are the type of details in a video game I can get around. So that's really cool. So yeah, with great bosses that you can fight revisiting the dungeon, cool foreshadowing on the walls, and you know, just being a good dungeon, first dungeon in the game. Yeah, I like it. All right, upper mecha base. You know what? I feel like we're at the point where we got to get in those top 3 tiers. Like everything from here on out is just absolute gas. So yeah, we're gonna put the upper mecha base in that I won't give up tier. So yeah, so there are just some things that make it a better version of the mecha base. It's higher in the sky, it's cooler looking, the interior's cooler, the boss fight is better. Yeah, it's really cool. Like, it's just It's just everything that the mecha base delivered, but on steroids. Also, there's an epic mecha battle that you get to do at the beginning of the dungeon, and it's awesome. You're like blowing up all the cannons on the base. Like if you've played Breath of the Wild Divine Beasts, like how you're trying to like take down the Divine Beast, it's like that, but like I'm sure that if you're watching this video, you have played Blue Dragon, so you probably don't need me to explain. But anyway, it's just this epic thing where you're taking down all the cannons with bullets, and it's just so sick. That is a great introduction to a dungeon. And then you get in there, and then yeah, it's just a cooler mecha base. So you know what? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. This is a good dungeon. All right, next we got Mural Valley. You know what? I feel like the common consensus is that this is kind of an annoying dungeon, but I think it's really cool. Flame Raptor is a great boss fight. The murals are really cool. Like that's what I like to see. Those are some cool, like literal murals that come to life and attack you off the walls. It's really cool. I like that the valley is separated into two parts where all the enemy design is completely different, with Mural Town in the middle. So you've got two different sides of the Mural Valley that feel different. The first side is more focused on enemy design and all that jazz, or the second part is more focused on like these puzzles where the bridges have collapsed and you have to use them as ladders and stuff. So you know what? It's pretty cool. And there's a bunch of chests here. So you know, this is a great dungeon, great aesthetic, absolute gas time with this dungeon. You know, the Mural Valley's a lot of fun. All right. Next is the C Cube. It looks cool, and this is where you get the black barrier thingamabobby, the black barrier device, and it's a great dungeon and great aesthetic. Looks super cool from the outside. But my favorite part about this, my favorite boss in the whole game, is in the C Cube, the Azure Abyssal Dragon. It's so cool. It's like a 7-phase boss fight or something, because each time you kill a segment, he regains all his health. So it's just an epic battle of absolute attrition. And super fun boss fight. But yeah, I mean, it looks really cool. It's a great dungeon. You get a great reward from it, and as my favorite boss in the game. So yeah. All right, the Lost Wilderness is actually such a great. The Ancient Ruins is technically the first dungeon, but the Lost Wilderness is like actually like the first dungeon. And you know what? It absolutely excels in being a great first dungeon. Tons of monster fights to do here. Shadow classes being introduced. Like you're just like, once you get here, I don't know. I feel like once you get to the Lost Wilderness, you're like, this is a cool game. And you're just, I don't know. At least when I first played this, I was just like grinding up my dudes and like absolutely going off fighting a bunch of enemies. You know what? I had a great time in the Lost Wilderness. And yeah, and you get to fight the first boss here. Hear the best boss theme in any video game, period. I will not take any questions. I think Eternity is the best boss music in any video game. So fun. There's so much rubble to search here. So much. It's just a fun area to search. And for a wilderness, it's really fun, actually. Yeah, it has so many firsts of the game, as introduces you so many great gameplay concepts. It's a lot to search, lots of fun jazz in the Lost Wilderness. Absolutely awesome. All right, next we've got the Ancient Factory, which is an epic dungeon. Coming right off the heels of the laser field and the underground river. It's basically the Patches Town Underground, but way bigger and way better. There's a super boss here, the Gold Mecha Robo Super Boss. Heart-wrenching sequence of events at the end of the dungeon where all your friends you made at Barrow Town get killed, and that is just depressing. But the worst part is that you kill them because you don't have a choice. Oh, that scene makes me so sad. I don't know, bro. I can't do that scene. But other than that, yeah, it's a great designed dungeon, great story elements, great boss fight, and yeah, and it's really cool all around. And this is like a great, yeah, it's just a great dungeon. I don't really know what else to say. There's a bunch of fun conveyor belt puzzles and all that jazz. So yeah, really cool. All right, next we've got the Forest of the Dead, which you go here to save Maru's tribe from their sickness that they have to collect these flowers. And it's a very fun dungeon. 29 treasure chests here. It's huge. Really, such a huge dungeon. Tons of fun monster fights, undead battles, great boss fight with the King Ghost. Elder Tree's a cool addition. There's some great enemy fights. The Thief Ghost, the Shooter Ghost, the Grinning Ghosts. And yeah, curing the people of Lago Village is a great scene. And when you revisit the place, you even get like a little mini boss fight. Green Barrier, you get a cool special accessory, the Crown of the King Ghost. So yeah, all around the Forest of the Dead is just a great dungeon. Absolute banger of a dungeon. One of my favorite forest dungeons in any video game. Really cool, great atmosphere and all that stuff. So yeah. All right, next we have got some amazing, I don't even know. You know what? I'm going to change this up a little bit. I'm going to move these here to make those top 2 tiers even more special. Yeah, we'll do that. That looks better. I like that. All right. Next, we've got the Ancient Hospital Ruins, an absolutely fantastic dungeon. This is the one you go under from the drill machine, and you've just got this epic dungeon. You're chasing Maru as he tries to find a medicine to cure his tribe, which does ultimately fail. That's why you go to the fort. But this is epic dungeon where it combines an awesome hospital aesthetic, which combines a hospital aesthetic with an ancient ruins aesthetic in this really cool way. Great enemy fights, great monster fights, lots of rooms that you have to like flip on light switches, flip them off. There's like ghosts that you have to fight and all that jazz. 3 floors, lots of cool rooms and stuff to search. There's lots of things to search here. Just because there's so much rubble and like different medical supplies you can look through. The headmaster's office was a nice touch as well. And there's a cool boss fight at the end, one of those like elemental gimmick boss fights, but it's done pretty well where it's not annoying, more fun than anything. So yeah, Ancient Hospital Ruins, absolutely fantastic dungeon. All right, Ancient Prison is it's fantastic. Yeah, I think same Ancient Prison. I'm gonna move the Forest of the Dead back up to there we go. Okay. Anyway, Ancient Prison is a great dungeon in terms of story. The story beats here are fantastic. This is where Clute gets kidnapped by Nene. And yeah, it just has cool enemies. You have to break out of jail, save your allies, team back up. It's this really cool dungeon where in the end, yeah, it's just great story beats. Again, I like the gameplay mix up where you have to fight enemies with a smaller party. Yeah, you get this epic lead up into the next dungeon. Well, not really the next dungeon because Hatchtown Underground, but pretty much the next dungeon. Nene's Fortress. Yeah. This is just a great dungeon all around, and yeah, absolute highlight of the game. And yeah, this is really, especially story wise, this is awesome. Also, I am about to make another tier, and that is going to be another huge gap bigger than Ultimate Zabo, because these 4 dungeons are all probably like all 4 of these dungeons are probably in my top 5 RPG dungeons of all time, and that's not even a joke. Like these last 4 dungeons are absolute masterpieces in dungeon design, and these are part of why Blue Dragon is one of my favorite games of all time. All 4 of these dungeons are just so good, so fun. I can't even explain how much I love these dungeons. So yeah, in 4th place is going to have to be the Shuffle Dungeon. And the reason that the Shuffle Dungeon places in 4th is because it has absolutely no story relevance. It's actually a DLC dungeon, and it's based off of a previous Mistwalker game, Away Shuffle Dungeon. They wanted to break this one out more in the mainstream because that game didn't do as well. So they're like, you know what? We should add a Shuffle Dungeon over to Blue Dragon. And you know what? It worked super well. This is one of my favorite RPG dungeons. It's awesome. How it works is you have to obtain different passwords throughout the dungeon by searching rubble, chests. You defeat different enemies and you obtain these passwords. And by getting, every time you get a password, the dungeon layout shuffles. So it just completely changes how you view the dungeon every time. It's like this disorienting, really cool vibe. And you have to keep finding these passwords to progress in the dungeon. This whole dungeon even like completely mixes it up in terms of a bunch of unique items that you can only get in this dungeon. Like it feels like its own game, you know. It feels like its own like whole this whole different experience, but a bunch of cool gear that you can get in this dungeon. You can refight the legendary dragons again, which is awesome. There's also 9 super bosses that you can fight here. So yeah, there's the Gold Dragon, the Queen Ghost, the King and Queen Mist, the Kaiser Kaelon, Gilalaw's Ghost, Rainbow Pooh, Female Pirate, Gold Dolahan, and once you beat all those boss fights, you can fight the Shuffle Guardians themselves, where you have to fight evil versions of yourself, which is awesome. It's amazing. The only reason it places in 4th is because it has no relevance to the story, and if you get unlucky, you might have to go through it more than 9 times, which is kind of annoying. So, yeah, it can be kind of annoying, and it doesn't have any story relevance, but it still is a great dungeon. It's like its own whole mini side game, and it really just tests your limits. It's the hardest dungeon in the game with a bunch of crazy stuff. You have to be really good at the game to get through this dungeon. It's awesome. It tests everything you know about Blue Dragon. Maybe if you're playing in normal mode, it's not too bad, but if you play this in hard mode, you're going to get your butt handed to you a couple times before you start getting the gist of it. You really have to have some good strategy in this dungeon, and it just is awesome. Now, running through it multiple times can get kind of annoying, and that's why it's in the bottom of this tier, but it's still one of my favorite RPG dungeons of all time. It just feels like its own little side game, and in the end, I absolutely dug the Shuffle Dungeon. And it's like $2. It's like $2 to get this as a DLC, and it's absolutely worth it. Like, it just, with all the different new enemy designs, awesome boss fights, like, if you, like, you would absolutely regret it if you don't get this awesome DLC. All right, let's move into the Primitive Cube. This place has like, I don't know, 7 bosses. See, these dungeons have so many bosses. That's part of why I like them so much. But yeah, it doesn't have 9 dungeons. This one has 7. I'm sorry, 9 bosses, not 9 dungeons. But 7 bosses. It's the final dungeon of the game. Has a great design. Has a confusing layout, but it grew on me. Really makes you think abstractly as you go through, fight these 7 dungeon bosses. They're all very cool bosses. And the amazing endgame plot beats to some crazy plot twists at the end of the game. Yeah. Also, the Primitive Cube is just such a crazy idea from the get-go. The literal cube that is like, has like dinosaurs on it. Like, it's a literal cube. Like, what are we doing with this game? But yeah, the end game of this just goes absolutely bonkers. Like, if you think Final Fantasy VIII has a weird end game, you need to play. Yeah, in the end, this dungeon, again, one of my favorite RPG dungeons of all time. The aesthetic is fantastic. 7 boss fights. Just amazing plot beats. Super good final boss. Great music. All around, the Primitive Cube is amazing. Now, even still, like, I mean, I think that we're going to have to get another huge gap here, because even though these are probably both like in my top 4 or 5 dungeons ever, I think that there even needs to be another gap here, and this is going to be like, these are probably still in my top 5-10 dungeons of all time, but like everything that's about to be in this, everything that is in this last tier, easily both of these are in my top 3. It's like these other ones, debatable, maybe top 10, but these are like probably my 2 favorite dungeons in any video game ever. So like, top 2 dungeons. Like, these dungeons are so fun to me. And starting in second place on this list is the Flying Fortress, one of my favorite dungeons ever put in a video game. That entrance sequence is so cool. The large scale fight sequence where you have to do all this crazy button mashing to even get in is awesome. There's a bunch of unique mecha robots to fight here. Great treasure chest. There's 5 boss fights here, but they are much less like the ones in the Primitive Cube and the Shuffle dungeon. Some of them are like reskins of previous boss fights. Obviously not all of them, but a couple of them are, so that there can be more. But nope, here we just get 5 completely crazy, unique Mecha Robo boss fights. So fun, and you get this awesome Mech battle sequence after this dungeon. Then you get a celebration sequence. It's pretty much the quintessential RPG dungeon for me. Like, this is literally my second favorite RPG dungeon of all time, and it's so fun, so good. I can't even describe how fun this dungeon is. The whole time I was like, I know this is going to be one of my favorite games of all time. But you know what? There's one dungeon this is my favorite RPG dungeon of all time. And it even makes the Flying Fortress pale in comparison. Like, this is like twice as good as the Flying Fortress. And it is just the greatest RPG dungeon of all time for me. At least of the games I've played. I'm sure there's probably one out there that will make me change my mind. But there's 5 floors here. Each continues to get better and better. They all have different themes. There's a time limit that really adds that intensity to it. But if you actually lose the time limit, you're like, oh, wait. Because you have these collars on you that will blow up if you run out of time. But it's funny because if you actually run out of time, it's like, oh, there's not actually a timer on this. So it's not a real timer, which is just funny. Because, yeah, anyway. But it does add to the intensity if you don't know about that. But yeah, you actually can't die, so that's funny. But anyway. Story and character development in this dungeon. Peak Blue Dragon. Like, all the best moments of the game happen in this dungeon. The first floor, you got some epic monster fights. You got some really good battles, especially in hard mode. You get a double phase boss fight, Land Shark A and B. Yeah, just a great boss fight as a whole. Super fun floor. Then the second floor, there's not monster fights here, but there's a bunch of cool magician enemies to fight. It's the best floor of the fortress. You fight a 2-phase boss fight where the first phase is like a 5-target boss fight. You fight all the bosses in the Flying Fortress in the first phase. And then in the second phase, fight Zabo, but he's Grand Zabo. So he's like really buff compared to his original. And it's just a great fight. 2 phases makes it great enough already. But that first phase being like 5 targets, like, it's just, the stakes are super high, super good. The third floor is really cool. You freaking control the moon, the moon lasers I was talking about earlier, the laser field in the underground river. Yeah, you're controlling them now, and you're using them to shoot things. It's so, wait. Oh, you control one of them to kill the other one. So yeah, you're shooting these moon lasers. It's so freaking epic. Great mini game. It's actually a fun mini game, and it's a challenging one too. And then the next floor, you fight the Jumbo Mecha Robo, which is so cool. You're fighting this huge Mecha Robo. Has over 100,000 HP, and I don't know if you can actually kill it that way. The way you're supposed to kill it is break it into smaller pieces and then target the main lead Mecha Robo. But comment down below if you've killed the Jumbo Mecha Robo by more conventional means. That would be epic. But unconventional means. That would be so cool. And then, so you've got all these amazing boss fights, right? And then the last floor doesn't even have a boss fight, actually, in the traditional sense. But there's like a scripted boss fight where you have to like attack your friend, and you have to try to attack him, but not actually hit him. You have to hit this thing that's controlling his mind, controlling him. Then after that, you get an amazing cutscene with great character development for Shu, some great cutscenes, and is a segue into my favorite portion of the game, which is Devour Village. Like, not only is it's like the best dungeon in the game, and then it perfectly leads into my favorite part of the whole game, one of my favorite sequences in RPGs in general, Devour Village. And yeah, this is my favorite RPG dungeon of all time. I could rant about it for another hour if I wanted to. I could get even more into it. But you know what? I think I'll leave it here or else I'll get way too. I don't want to be too obnoxious. You know what? Yeah, this is my favorite RPG dungeon of all time. Nothing has beat it so far. Nothing has come close since. Even the Flying Fortress is still like 3 times worse than it. So let me know down below if there's any dungeons that are like even better than Nene's Fortress. Like if you can tell me a dungeon that you think I'll like better than that, I need to play that game right away because I will be obsessing over that dungeon. If it's better than Nene's Fortress, I might tear up. It's going to be so good. But anyway, this is my Blue Dragon dungeon ranking. This game is some of my favorite RPG dungeons of all time. It has a couple stinkers here. These ones aren't too great, but they're still not that bad. The Aurora Ruins is pretty bad. Then all these are still fantastic dungeons, but then these 4 are just some of the best dungeons of all time. And yeah, Blue Dragon is one of my favorite games of all time. It's so underrated, so underappreciated. Everyone talks about Lost Odyssey, and even to a lesser degree, they talk about The Last Story. But Blue Dragon here, it's even a franchise. Like they even got banger sequel. I haven't even played through Awakened Shadow yet. I need to get to that. But Blue Dragon Plus is also a very underrated game. But anyway, Blue Dragon, one of my favorite games of all time, one of the best dungeon lineups of all time, and has my top 2 dungeons of all time. So yeah, let me know what you think down below in the comments. Do you love Blue Dragon? Do you think it's mid? What do you think about the game? Let me know down below. And thank you all for watching this video. Have a fantastic day. Peace out, Blue Dragon fans. And don't worry, I'll be making like 10 more Blue Dragon videos soon. I made a boss ranking way back when, but then I forgot to make all the other ones, so I'm catching up now, gonna make all these Blue Dragon videos. But anyway, thank you all for watching. See you in the next video. Peace out, Blue Dragon fans. Thanks to my good man Chemo for being a patron. If you want tons of exclusive RPG content, join now as a patron today.